Time now for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
First up, currently the Titans sit at 16 in ESPN's most recent power rankings. Second lowest for the 2-1 teams. We talked about this yesterday, Jared. So, Joe, I want you to go first. 16 currently for the Titans. Too high, too low, or just right?
I think it's a little too low. So I've got to do my little rankings for the Athletic every week, and I think I had the Titans at 10 or 11. I think that they're I think they've demonstrated that they're a playoff caliber team. I guess Seattle not looking as good last week. These power rankings can obviously ebb and flow a lot, but I think they're certainly better than that in terms of quality. And I think their performance is right around that 10 to 12 range or so. Granted, now their week one performance was right around high 20s, maybe even low 30s. It was so bad. But I think the last 2 weeks, look, I think more of the win over the Colts I know than Jared does. I know the Colts were extremely banged up and are banged up, and they also played a team with basically none of its receivers and not without its starting linebacker and a starting safety and so on and so forth. It's a very banged up Titans team as well.
So I don't think that if you're a banged up team that you should get any bonus, right? Like this is the NFL and injuries happen. And so a team that's banged up, like Carson Wentz is hurt. Well, Carson Wentz is always going to be hurt. So I think that we should probably kind of address Indianapolis, how they look right now, regardless of, if the quarterback was healthy. I'll say this. I have always said, be careful with September football. The Raiders, for example, in ESPN's power rankings are 5. If the Titans played the Raiders today, I'd take the Titans. If the Titans played the 49ers today, I'd take the Titans. If the Titans played some of these 2-1 teams, then I would take the Titans over them. But all you can go off of, and I told Caroline this in the last segment, I think these power rankings are, who's your quarterback? How good were you last year? And what have you done on television? So the Chargers, for example, beat the Chiefs, and everybody loves their quarterback, so they skyrocket the Chargers into the top 10. Dallas is on TV, and they love their quarterback, so they skyrocket Dallas into the top 10. I think the national media doesn't think much of Ryan Tannehill, and I think that any time that someone puts the Titans down, it's really about that. And so I think the Titans are probably in like the 10 range, like Joe said, maybe even a little bit higher, because I do think the Titans are going to run away with this division. And I think that, the top of the AFC, if Kansas City doesn't look any better, is certainly not out of the equation.
Next thing, Robbie and Rexrode talked about it. We talked about it. But Vrabel's comments on Julio on Sunday night after the game, saying that he needed to see more against defenders. On Monday, kind of walking it back and saying, no, it had nothing to do with Julio's performance. Are we buying or selling Mike Vrabel's backtrack on Monday? Jared, you go first.
I mean, I think once you say that we wanted guys in there to dig out safeties, you can't then go and take that back. And when you say that, it's kind of like, hey, we want guys in there that want to block. Now, Julio, to his credit, Julio chased down the defender on the Chester Rogers interception. And if it's not for Julio, they may have scored a touchdown or gotten the ball inside the Tennessee 15-yard line. So I'm not questioning Julio's effort. And I'm not questioning Julio's blocking or anything. I'm just saying when Vrabel said, Vrabel said that it was a precautionary reason that he took him out of the game. But then when he brought up the dig out safeties line, that was when I was like, it felt kind of like a pot shot at Julio. And while I didn't make too much of what Vrabel said after week one that, blew up, I will say that it does feel like, Vrabel has to, again, explain himself as far as Julio's concerned. And in this case, I don't think you can unring that bell.
Anyone who took that as him saying Julio wasn't blocking well, one, if you watch the game, he actually did block well, and he made the play that Jared said. So, what he was saying to me was, this is going to be a physical game. We got to run. They know we've got to run. I don't want him out there because of he wouldn't fill in the blank. But this quote from Vrabel on Sunday says this one little part, again, quote, quote, again, we've been through these with players and their health. In other words, there's an injury and I'm not going to tell you guys about it. I'm sorry. And that's really the problem, because then we get into this, okay, was Vrabel proving a point? Does he think he's not blocking well? Whatever the case may be. But he really did tell us that with that little snippet right there. And then now we see he's out. He's got some kind of a leg injury. In fact, I haven't even seen the injury report yet, but he wasn't out there today. So the problem here is just that Vrabel won't go back on his own rules at times, because by not doing that, he opens the door for this other stuff. But do I buy? Yeah, I mean, I buy that this was about health and about not putting him in harm's way, and it was about nothing else.
Next, the Jets are currently a 6.5-point underdog against the Titans. Buy or sell this. The Jets will cover plus 6.5 against a Titans team without Julio and AJ. Joe, you go first.
Oh, I'm selling that big time, and it's an embarrassment for the Titans if they do. The Jets have some good players on defense. You know, they've got a defensive coach. I think he's actually could be a good coach for the Jets. They are utterly atrocious on offense. And look, maybe Julio, it's possible Julio could play. Let's just take him out. Let's say he doesn't play. I saw Marcus Johnson out there today running pretty well. We'll see. We'll see with him. I say that, maybe Josh Reynolds has to come in. You got Westbrook-Akina. You got Chester Rogers. I think Ferkser has a good chance of being back. You have Derrick Henry. You have more than enough to go in there and thump that team by double figures. And it's really inexcusable if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I agree. I just, I threw the fit after the fact that I didn't think they played very well on Sunday because I thought they played sloppy. If they play sloppy a fourth week in a row where they're turning the football over, they're, the dumb stuff from Tannehill, if that stuff continues, now I got a problem. Now it's a real trend because the Jets suck. So if you're doing that against the Jets, I mean, people can convince themselves that the Colts don't suck. They do. But, a win's a win in the NFL, and a win's a win against the Colts. And I don't care who plays wide receiver this week. I don't care if Jared Stillman and Joe Rexrode play wide receiver.
I'd like to see that.
I mean, they should thump the Jets. Now, I'm not saying they will, because I am nervous about the Jets because I'm nervous about how the Titans are going to approach this game. And I'm nervous about the sloppy stuff the Titans have done. And I remember Cincinnati last year. And right now, the Titans are flawed. The Titans are sloppy. But they should go into New York, regardless of AJ and regardless of Julio and regardless of Marcus Johnson. And they should go in there and they should thump the Jets. I do need to go back on something with Joe, though, which is when he brought up the Vrabel, what Vrabel said Sunday, when he just took out the transcript and read the part about, I'm not going to get into injuries because I don't get into injuries because I would never get it. He didn't address the dig out the safeties line. Now Joe's telling me if you watch the tape, you can see that Julio, I don't care what the tape said. We are discussing Vrabel's comments. And when Vrabel says, dig out safeties, we wanted guys in there, dig out safeties, everybody interpreted that. Did you interpret that as a shot at Julio's blocking?
Yes.
Chris Sanders, who played in the league, interpreted it as a shot at Julio's blocking. I interpreted it as a shot at Julio's blocking. So
Do you still?
The dig out safeties line?
You still interpret that as a shot at his blocking?
I do not think that Mike Vrabel should have said that. And
Well,
once you
Mike
say it, you
Vrabel
can't unring the bell.
Well, sure you can. I mean, once you have more information that Vrabel should have told us in the first place, then it changes the meaning of it. I mean, we have new information now. So you can go back and look at that line. Here's the line. Okay, I think as this thing played out, tried to manage where he's at, understand what type of game we thought the end of the game was going to be. And those guys were going in there trying to dig safeties out. He didn't say we needed guys who can dig safeties out. We didn't need someone who can't dig a safety out. In fact, a week earlier, when we asked Vrabel about all the big plays Julio made at Seattle, he said, what I liked? His blocking. I liked him off the ball. So I understand the interpretation in that moment because he wasn't clear. This is on Vrabel for not just coming out and saying, yeah, there was the tightening of a muscle and We decided that we're not messing around with that. That's all you had to do.
Right. Like I'm
But
not telepathic.
you can't look at
I
it
can't
now.
tell what he's thinking. I can only hear what he says. And everybody except for you interpreted what he said as a shot at Julio's blocking, including Chris Sanders, who played wide receiver in the league.
That's not true. That's not true.
Your co-host said it today.
Listen, read what I read off the game. I said he left it completely open for interpretation, and this is going to be a thing. So, again, the new information now, you go back and you can piece it together. Okay, great. I mean, it's really much ado about nothing. I'm not saying that at the time I absolutely discounted that. No, not at all. I mean, again, Vrabel not being clear opens the door. Is it that? Is it blocking? Or is it, Julio, something or other, pissed him off, and so Vrabel's going to prove a point? I mean, all those things are open because Vrabel doesn't come clean about the injury. I'm saying right now, though, how could you still interpret it that way?
Well, I just was asked, did he fairly walk the comments back? And I'm not sure he did. I mean, we're still talking about it on Wednesday. Your co-host didn't buy it today. Chris Sanders didn't buy it today.
Again, I don't know if he walked them back fairly. Information has walked them back. Can we agree on that? I mean, that should be pretty easy. Or do you think that Julio missing today is part of the ruse?
No. I think that Julio clearly had a tight hamstring, and he was like, I can go back in there, and Vrabel was like, no, don't do it. I totally think that's the case. But the question was, did he walk the comments back effectively? And nobody was truly buying Vrabel except for you. Nobody was truly buying Vrabel at his word on Monday.
Okay, fine. All right. Yes. As always, whatever he says is gospel.
Switching to the college side of things, Vols lose to Florida, put up a pretty solid first half. How much time are you giving Josh Heupel until he starts to be in the conversation to beat the Floridas of the SEC, the Floridas, the Georgias being in conversation for the East? How much time does Josh Heupel have to put the Vols in that position? Jared, you go first.
I think the one thing that, and I shouldn't say this works against Heupel, but I think one thing that has opened my eyes in the last couple of weeks is I thought Sam Pittman did a great job at Arkansas last year. I think Sam Pittman is doing a legendary job right now at Arkansas. Now, I think they're going to get blown out this week against Georgia. But as bad as that Arkansas team was under Chad Morris to what they are now as a top 10 team in the SEC, it makes me think that if you're really an elite coach, which is all Tennessee fans want, they don't want an okay coach. Like where I went to college at Louisville, we can do 8-4. They want an elite coach. And I think that you probably know pretty quickly about an elite coach, whether or not they're elite. You knew Urban Meyer was elite pretty quickly at Florida. You knew Nick Saban was elite pretty quickly at LSU. You knew that Nick Saban was elite at Alabama when he turned them around in 2 years. You knew James Franklin, the job he did at Vanderbilt, was an elite level turnaround. I think that Heupel has got to be able to have them competitive and competent, which I did not think they were, including his coaching at the end of the first half. I think he's got to have them competent next year and competitive. Not winning, but they've got to be competitive. There's got to be a game in the fourth quarter that we think, hey, if Tennessee makes a play here or there, or if Heupel schemes up a touchdown here or there, that the Vols can win.
So if Georgia just destroys Arkansas this week, do you walk back your comments on Sam Pittman?
I do not.
Okay. So
let me ask you this question: if Georgia demolishes Arkansas this weekend, which I think they're going to, does that change the great job Sam Pittman has done so far?
No, I think he's done a phenomenal job, but you have to be realistic about those particular, especially to me, Georgia. I still put Georgia in a different category from Florida, honestly.
Sure.
We'll see. We'll see how Dan Mullen does. I mean, he's a very good coach, but I still think there's a different level there. To me, I think by year 4, you want to beat one of those teams. Okay. So let's go year 4 win. Until then, you want to see gradual progress. I mean, the sad thing for Tennessee is, seriously, catch that pass 24-21 the third quarter. I don't know how it ends, but I know that the heavily favored team at home in a rivalry game does not want to be in a fourth quarter game with the underdog. And that possibly makes it a fourth quarter game. I agree that they were too sloppy. I didn't like the clock management at the end of the first half. They're a long way away. And, one thing to remember on Pittman, phenomenal job. He did inherit some talent. I mean, he really did. Don't shake your head, Jared. I mean, again, you don't like recruiting stuff and rankings. That's fine. But there is information out there that tells you that he inherited a talented roster. He's done phenomenal work with it. But for as much crap as Chad Morris took, he actually did some of the really what he was hired to do, other than, he couldn't coach football. So it's not like Sam Pittman took over the absolute dregs and is now winning with it. He has done phenomenal work with a pretty talented roster. Josh Heupel has some talent too, and that's why he's got to win games like Saturday at Missouri. I mean, he's got to win these middling SEC games with the roster he has.
Do you think that Clark Lee would have Arkansas? Well, I should say, do you think Sam Pittman would have lost 69-0 Saturday to Georgia if he was Vanderbilt?
Oh, he certainly could have. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he motivates them to lose 44-0. I mean, come on,
that is a 3-touchdown difference. I know that it's 44-69. Who gives a rat's? That
it was 62, just to be accurate.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I gave Georgia
69
an
on the brain.
I gave Georgia an extra touchdown that they didn't deserve. My apologies. I think Pittman. Come on, it's Arkansas, Joe. It's Arkansas. You're going to try to tell me that Chad Morris recruited well? He was only there for 2 years. How much can you recruit in 2 years?
This is just like your thing. Well, I mean, you better recruit well if you're an SEC head coach. I mean, Jeremy Pruitt, for all of the crap that went wrong under him, he came right in, and all of a sudden you got Henry To'oTo'o and you got Eric Gray, and, you got some guys who, well, of course, they're not there anymore, but that made a big difference on the field. You got to recruit right away. And he did. I think Pittman's done a great job.
I do also have to say, if we're going to rank SEC teams, I think that Arkansas is a slight echelon above Vanderbilt, to be fair.
Not when he took that job over.
Oh yes, come on.
Oh,
come on.
Joseph,
Jared,
they were 2-10. No, look it up. They were 2-10. You told me yesterday when they said all SEC schedule, you thought Arkansas was not going to win a game.
I said between Arkansas and Vanderbilt, those were the two that I didn't think would win a game. But if you're going to look at programs, I'm going to put Arkansas above Vanderbilt.
Well, duh. Arkansas won a national title.
I
mean,
the resources. That's what she's saying. The resources, the talent.
I thought you were talking about when Sam Pittman took that job.
No, I'm talking about programs.
Okay, I'm talking about when Sam Pittman took that job, it was as bad, if not worse, than Vanderbilt. If for no other reason,
I'm not going to say worse.
You have to play in the SEC West. So Vanderbilt is the worst of the East. Arkansas is the worst of the West. But the West is way harder than the East. Mm-hmm. And he succeeded in the West. And that's my point of, I think
he's having success. I wouldn't say has succeeded.
Well, I mean, what would you consider success in Arkansas? They're a top 10 team right now.
Yeah, so he is having success.
So
I'm not going to go ahead and say, whoop, yep, done, Sam Pittman, success, done, over with. He's succeeded.
It's early.
Oh, they give him a
success.
contract extension. So I think one of these jobs is going to come open, and I think he's going to be, like USC's open now, and I don't think USC would take a ball coach like him, but one of these jobs is going to come open, like Michigan or something like that. And I think you're going to hear his name, and I think Arkansas is going to sign him to a 6-year, $8 million per extension because they're so afraid of losing him. And I would have no problem if Arkansas did that.
As they should. But while we're on the topic of the SEC West, I have another one for you. Ole Miss going to Tuscaloosa this weekend. Buying or selling? Ole Miss upsets the Tide in Tuscaloosa. Joe.
Oh, I'm going to sell that one. I hope it's a fun game. I hope it's somewhat like last year's game, which really neither defense was had a chance in that game. It was pretty remarkable. Yeah. And look, I mean, I think Ole Miss is going to score some points, but I think it works out pretty well for Saban that they have the recent, Florida game for him to discuss and talk over with his team. And Alabama has some issues. They got some things to work on. They got some young players at key spots. Ultimately, I think they're going to be there in the end, and I think they're going to end up pulling away in this game and winning by about 10, 14 points or so.
So I'm torn on this game, and I hate doing this. This is the one sport, though, where I feel like we have to because college football is it's so subjective and so few teams play each other that we compare. It's like, well, should this team be 4 or should this team be 4? Well, they're never going to play each other. And they don't have any common opponents that really played each other. So, this team beat this team by this much and this team beat that. And I hate doing it, but I'm going to do it here. I was disappointed with the Florida Gators last week because the way that they played against Alabama, I thought that they should have never allowed Tennessee in the football game. And if Tennessee can hit some passes and not commit penalties and coach at the end of the first half, then I think the Vols would have been in a game in the second half with Florida. Like, Florida did nothing to have Tennessee have 9 players on the field for a punt. But Florida, what they showed me against Alabama was a team that I thought could beat Alabama. I've watched Ole Miss play once, and they absolutely demolished and embarrassed my team at Louisville. Now, I've watched Louisville play every game since then. I watched them beat UCF. I watched them beat a terrible Florida State team. Louisville is not good, but I think they're better than Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee could beat UCF. I think they're better than Tennessee, and that makes me think that Ole Miss with that offense, that defense will be good enough to get a couple of stops. I'm not sure Alabama's defense that couldn't stop Florida is going to be able to stop Ole Miss's offense.
So you're buying?
I said I'm torn. Because on the other side, Alabama's got the greatest coach of all time, and I do love that coach. Even though Joe Rexrode did not think Nick Saban was a good coach when he was at Michigan State,
No, that's not what I said.
I will say, what did you say, Joe?
Well, I said he wasn't the greatest coach of all time when he was at Michigan State. He was a 500 coach through 4 years. There were people who wanted him fired through 4 years at Michigan State. He goes 9-2 in year 5. He gets the LSU job. He's the greatest of all time. Period. He had
people
to
wanted him fired.
Come a long way. And if you put Nick Saban,
people said they wanted him fired.
Well, Joe's a person.
Michigan State fans, I was attuned to what they thought. Listen.
That's because you are a Michigan State fan.
Exactly. I got my Sparty little glove, my little foam finger. Listen, if you put Nick Saban at Vanderbilt, tell me like his first 3 years records right now. It takes over Vanderbilt this year. What's his record his first 3 years?
12-0, 12-0, 12-0.
Oh,
yeah.
Please. You are so full of it.
God, I have no idea.
I would say 2-10 year 1.
Saban is not going 2-10. Nick Saban is not going 2-10.
At Vanderbilt?
James Franklin was 6-6 his first year. He took over Bobby Johnson's 2-10 team, and I promise you Nick Saban's a better coach than James Franklin.
A 2-10 team with 11 guys who went on to the NFL, by the way.
Because Franklin coached their real ends up.
You see 11? Oh, it was all because they got coached up, Jared. That's what it was. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah, this Bobby Johnson, who never recruited anybody, other than Jay Cutler. Bobby Johnson, had one good team.
Go look at their roster.
Had one good team at Vanderbilt. Jordan Matthews was a 2-star player that James Franklin turned into the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. At some point, coaching has to matter. And I think Saban is a better coach. Go around the room. Who's the better coach?
Saban's the greatest coach.
Saban or Franklin?
Well, none of us are denying that Saban is a better coach than James Franklin. If Franklin can do it,
why can't Saban do it?
Well, but you have to look at the situation now. That roster is absolutely in a worse place than after the Bobby Johnson era. There's no question. And we will track the NFL players from this program that are on this team right now. It's not close.
People say. People.
Yeah, people.
People.
Hey, I'll show you the newspaper articles from 1998 when Michigan.
The one that you wrote?
Nick Saban. Well, I don't know that I really wrote.
In fairness to Joe, I asked Floyd, like when they were coaching the Oilers together, I said, when you coached with Saban at Houston, did you know that he was, and
different?
Floyd looked at me and goes, did I know he was a good coach? Yes. Did I think he was the greatest coach in the history of NC2A football? No. And I was like, all right, fair point. Now, Joe didn't even, Joe said, he was a 500 coach. So Floyd thought a little bit more of Nick than Joe.
Well, okay.
I'm telling you facts.
When it comes to Michigan State things, I think I'm going to side with Joe on this one. I think that I probably trust his Michigan State insight a little bit more than yours.
Jared Mason played on the team. He said he thought that Saban was a great coach.
Are we ready to tally?
Please do.
Okay, we'll go through our list. Titans sit at 16 in the power rankings. I'm going to have to go with Jared on this one. The list is just total BS, and whoever takes it as Bible, it's just a BS list. Buying or selling, Mike Vrabel's comments on Julio. I also have to side with Jared on this one. I'm sorry, Joe. I just don't buy anything that Mike Vrabel does.
Joe is the only one in the world who thinks what Joe said.
I just have to take everything with a grain of salt, and I think what Vrabel said on Monday was just him trying to cover himself for what he said on Sunday.
I take all his words as gospel.
I'm not saying that, Joe. Jets will cover 6.5. I think we can all agree that the Titans need to thump the Jets. I don't think there's really anything there that, we can disagree on. How much time do you give Josh Heupel? I have to side with Joe. I mean, I've said 3 years. Joe said 4 years. I kind of have to agree with him. I mean, I don't think that Tennessee is in any place to beat Florida and Georgia next year. Now, do you have to see improvement over those 3 to 4 years? Yes, 100%. But I think once you get to year 3 or year 4, that's when you're really going to start to see things come to fruition. Also have to side with Jared. I think Ole Miss could get it done. I already took them plus 14.5. I don't know if they necessarily win, but they will absolutely keep it close. So, Jared, congratulations.
Oh, so thank you so much.
You have won.
I did not actually buy that Ole Miss thing.
But I don't know if I'm necessarily buying it either.
Because I mean, he's the greatest coach of all time. He's the greatest coach of all time.
But also,
though Joe didn't think
Saban's
so.
had down years before. To Joe's point at Michigan State.
Yeah, Michigan State. Michigan State, Saban's first year, they lost to Louisiana Monroe, and that was, one or another. Joe Rexrode, we appreciate you. You have something you want to say, I can tell.
No, I'm very happy for you, Jared.
Your mouth is wide open like you are waiting to jump in.
I was worried about you, and I'm glad that you got, that Carolina was nice to you and gave you the W. That's
I just don't want to see any whining over here, Joe. I don't have any cheese
I gotta
to go
be
with
honest.
this wine.
I have to be 100% honest.
Totally hear you.
I think Carolina was cheating this one too.
Why would I cheat this one?
And I think she's cheating this one too. Because you've given it to him twice in a row, and so you know that I'm gonna, it's like.
So no matter what I do, I'm cheating. If Joe wins,
Right.
I'm cheating. If you win, I'm cheating.
Well,
It's a Carolina
I'm sick of this
conspiracy
job.
either
You know
way.
what? This is a thankless job.
At least I am, consistent about how I want pass interference called. I don't just want it called when I'm on offense. I want it called the way it should be called. That's all I'm saying. Joe,
So why don't you
appreciate
judge it next time since you're the greatest judge
Deal.
of all time? Great.
Deal.
It's all on you now.
Joe, appreciate you as always.
All right. Thanks, guys.